okay for me to do this, right? Hey, Anthonix Maximus here. Let's discuss a movie I saw this weekend called Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the direct sequel to Steve Martin's Pink Panther. I have to say, I'm actually really impressed with this film. I know I'm gonna sound like a parrot of a lot of reviewers, but this is a pretty decent superhero movie I've seen in a while. While I said with Black Adam, a lot of these superhero movies are paint by number, this film kind of takes things in a different approach. It actually honors the memory of Chadwick Boseman. It acknowledges his death, as in the character T'Challa. By the way, if I butcher any names, I do apologize. My mouth just is stupid. My mouth just says words weird. In this film, it honors the memory of Chadwick Boseman. It doesn't explain why T'Challa passes away, and I'm okay with that. In fact, it almost mirrors just like Chadwick Boseman, where they do mention that he was living with an illness where he was suffering in silence, just like the actor. The film actually follows Shuri, the sister of T'Challa. The film is about how everyone of Wakanda is trying to move on with his death, and Shuri is the one who is the intelligent scientist, but she's also trying to learn her place and learn how to grieve. But she'd rather stick her life into her work rather than take a moment to think about her brother. Letitia Wright plays Shuri in this film, and while in the first Black Panther movie she was adorably funny, in this film she still is, but she's actually grown into a strong, independent woman because of the tragedies in her life. Queen Ramonda is once again played by Angela Bassett, and she's there to actually help Shuri grow and mourn the death of her brother. You really learn to feel for Shuri because she really does go through a lot in this film. She goes through a lot of growth. We're introduced to new characters like Riri Williams. Dominique Thorne plays Riri Williams, who actually becomes Ironheart, who is a brilliant student who knows how to build her own armor suit, just like Tony Stark did. And the main antagonist of the film is Namor. They don't call him Submariner in this movie. In fact, the only people who call him Namor are his enemies. Kukulkan is his birth name. And Namor is actually played by Tenoch Huerta Mena. Again, I'm so sorry if I get these names wrong. I don't mean to. I'm really doing my best. This mouth. I never really thought much about Namor as a comic book character. I always just kind of looked at him as the Marvel equivalent of Aquaman, because that's how he is in the comics. Because in the comics, it's kind of the same thing. His mother is the Queen of Atlantis. His father is a surface dweller. But they do actually change that in this film. Now, I'm sure, because comics get retconned all the time, so someone will correct me later and tell me that, no, this is the way it is now, so bear with me. I'm just telling you my knowledge, and my knowledge is just me quickly researching and me remembering the episode of the 1990s Fantastic Four cartoon where Namor was in love with Sue Storm, which is funny because, speaking of Storm, Black Panther actually married Storm for a while. And what I also think is funny is that when I was younger, before the first X-Men movie came out, I actually had in my head who I thought would make a good Storm, and I always imagined Angela Bassett. I think a woman like her would have made a great Storm. And there are times in this film where it's her showing her actual hair, well, in-world hair, and it's white, and she kind of looks like Storm. She probably could pass off as Storm now, but that's neither here nor there. I just like this film because Ryan Coogler actually doesn't just make a pow, pow, bam, bam, lasers going off everywhere superhero film. He knows how to take cultures of the African culture, but also the Mayan culture, and bring out the beauty in both. Some people might complain about the Rihanna music playing in the background occasionally, but you know what? It didn't bother me. I actually like Rihanna, and to me it fits. So I didn't mind that. I think Namor in this film was pretty intimidating. I don't know if I would have casted this actor to be Namor, but I kind of like the background to it. And oh my gosh, this actor has the most intimidating, angry eyes. Like, it's when you look at Namor, it's almost like you are threatened by him, but at the same time, feel a bit seduced by him. The cinematography is just beautiful. It's bright. Then there are moments where it's soft and faded just to really reflect the quietness of the scene. Because there are moments in the film where there's no music, very little sound in the background. It's just allowing the characters to just kind of take in the moment. Lupita Nyong'o comes back as Nakia, and I can't give much more away about that, but she does play a very pivotal part in this movie. I would argue more so than she did in the first movie. Okoye, once again, being a real badass, makes an impression. It's just this film is exciting. I say maybe there are parts where it goes on too long because you think it's about to be a final climax, but it's really not. That's kind of my only gripe about it. I don't really have too much to complain about in this one. I think I've covered enough for this. This film is just a breath of fresh air. It really stands on its own, honestly. Let's skip to the spoiler part real quick, all right? If you have seen the movie or if you have not seen the movie but don't care about the spoiler, stick around. If you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled for you, then I say come back to us in about here. Really, this is okay for me to do, right? I'm not offending anyone. I really am serious. I don't want to be an asshole when I do this, so it's okay when I do it, right? It's a great film. It's really beautiful to watch. It was a really relaxing film, very emotional. I almost lost it in parts because in the beginning we see Shuri trying to use the lab to come up with some kind of quick instant cure to save her brother, kind of replicating the heart-shaped herb that was destroyed by Killmonger in the first movie. But then when Queen Ramonda shows up and tells her that it's too late, and like Shuri is just breaking down and tears welling. I really did feel like the actors are crying about Chadwick. My friend who I went with, he would actually say that's a little disrespectful, but I'm gonna respectfully disagree on this because they could have made up a whole thing about Black Panther dying because some bad guy killed him or something insensitive, but they kept it close to Chadwick Boseman, where it was a shock to us all and there's nothing we could have done to save him, and how he suffered quietly. Very little knew of his sickness until it's too late. And the way the film just cuts from that beginning to the opening Marvel logo, showing not clips of other superhero films, but just showing us clips of Chadwick Boseman. There's no music either, it's just quiet. Now, normally I'm sick of the DC and the Marvel opening logos. Like, I think it just takes too long, and it really is normally a auto-fellatio. But in this case, for Chadwick Boseman, I think it really honored him. They introduced a character played by Lake Bell, and it seems to follow her for a while, like she's an important doctor on this military vessel, but she gets killed off. She's played by Lake Bell, who's done a lot of voice work. She's also been in comedies. Recently, she's been the voice of Poison Ivy in the Harley Quinn TV show, and she's also provided the voice of Black Widow in the What If series. And I thought she was going to become a important character because, again, she's a big named actress, but they killed her off. So I'm not sure why there was any focus on it. Along with Namor, we have Attuma and Namor. Those are actually important characters in the comics as well. Attuma is actually Namor's nemesis in the comics. There's been a couple times he's tried to overthrow Namor and rule Atlantis. And they don't call Namor's world Atlantis, they call it Talokan. And the backstory of Namor is different because they treated like both his parents were once surface dwellers, but they came across a plant that would actually save them, but they can only breathe in the water because they were being chased by the conquistadors. But Namor's born differently because he's a mutant. And that's kind of the current comic books now, is Namor is a mutant. He's one of the original mutants on Earth. Even though there are other mutants that predate him, like Apocalypse, but he's one of the originals. And now in the comics, he's part of the Illuminati, so he's involved in a lot of things. I like how Shuri goes through her moments of trying to mourn, but also trying to to save her kingdom. How Namor is trying to kill a scientist that created a device for harvesting vibranium. And we don't really see where Riri Williams, who she is working with in order to have created this thing at MIT. Which, by the way, the fact that she was at MIT made me think that, are we going to see a Spider-Man connection? Because that's where MJ and Ned ends up, they get accepted into that school. So I thought maybe this was a connection, but no. This film stays away from any cameos. They'll mention here and there, like Tony Stark. They'll mention, like just as a joke, the Hulk. And they'll even mention the blip from Thanos' finger snap. But it's really contained. It's more about the legacy of the Black Panther. Track down Riri Williams and they find out she's a student, so now they gotta protect her because she's young. That kind of reminds me of Multiverse of Madness, because it's the same thing. The bad guy wants to capture this young prodigy, but the hero is there to protect her from the bad guy. But the part that really broke my heart was when Namor and his army came to the surface of Wakanda and flooded everything and attacked everyone, and in the process managed to kill Queen Ramonda. I actually did not see that coming. I thought she was going to stick around. Again, I like Angela Bassett, so I was really heartbroken because now Shuri, who's already ignoring the fact that her brother passed away and she's trying to ignore having to grieve for him, now she has to grieve for her mother. So she's all alone in the world. She has no family left. It's just her. When you know it, Shuri trying to become Black Panther goes to the same ritual with an imitation form of the plant that she got from Nakia. She puts herself into a whole dreamlike suspense where she's on an astral plane hoping to see her passed away relatives, but all she sees is Eric Killmonger, once again played by Michael B. Jordan, because damn it, he is a great actor and Disney is not gonna lose him. And because Namor is essentially Killmonger in this film, the new Black Panther is given the choice of forgiveness or brutal revenge. Shuri goes through a lot to grow in this film. And even though Killmonger is dead, he's still a monster because he's pretty much threatening in her mind. Kind of like Green Goblin from Spider-Man. Or, if you really want to get fantasy about it, the White Witch from the Narnia series. It's like all these great actors had a powerful speech to deliver. But at the end, we do finally get our Black Panther. She gathers everyone to fight Namor and his army, just as well as getting Riri Williams to become Ironheart. Yeah, it's just a great all-out battle. And we have the fight between Namor and Shuri, and they're really hurting each other now, and they've come up with a device to weaken Namor so he can actually hurt like a regular human. And this is where she has that choice of murderous revenge or forgiveness, which, of course, because she's a hero, she decides to go with forgiveness. Realizing that not all surface dwellers are bad, because of this, Namor decides to back off. And later, we do see Namor explaining to his cousin Namora why he made the decision, but that tells me that Namora is going to try to come up with a scheme to overthrow him, along with Atuma. Just like as I remembered in the animated Fantastic Four cartoon. CIA agent Ross really had very little to do. The shock of the film is that his ex-wife is Valentina, who, if we know our comic books, is Madam Hydra. She's been showing up as Val. She's been recruiting U.S. agent Black Widow's sister. I don't even bother to know her name. And yeah, she's just basically gathering her forces because it's going to lead into the Thunderbolts. In this film, she doesn't quite act like Madam Hydra or Val that we've seen so far. She just acts like another CIA agent. That's why I kind of question if this film is on the same linear timeline as the other movies. They acknowledge things like the 5-year gap of the snap, but she just seems different. Or maybe she's just evolving to become Madam Hydra. But she does try to arrest her ex-husband, but he gets saved by the Wakandans anyway, so cool. But that's what I mean. Agent Ross and Val, that's like story B, because after Ross helps them out, it's just more of a thing setting Val up for her own adventures. Because, yeah, she's aware of everything, but she's not really trying to interfere either. So, yeah, that story be. And the mid-credit scene is, again, beautifully shot. It's a soft filter. It's very quiet. But that is where we learn that Nakia and T'Challa actually has a secret child. Although I swear, with all these Avengers having kids, it's like they're trying to set up young Avengers, right? Shuri now has family again. The way the scene just gets quiet and it focuses on her just smiling and reflecting, it was just a beautiful closing scene. No post-credits, and I'm glad for that. I get to tell our non-spoiler friends that they don't have to stick around. So, speaking of our non-spoiler friends, I think this is about the time we can bring them back in. So, let's bring them in now. Well, now the cat's out of the bag, or should I say the Panther's out of the bag. Let's wrap this up. The film is great. It's beautifully shot. There are surprise characters, and you'll be glad to see them, but it doesn't treat it like any other Marvel film. This film is self-contained. You're not going to have big-name other superheroes showing up. It's a self-contained movie. They only reference things because this has affected the world, but it just really focuses on Wakanda, the legacy of Black Panther, Shuri, and Namor. There's a mid-credit scene. It's beautiful. I will say it's not like the other mid-credit scene where it's like, uh-oh, here comes Zappity Zop or whoever. It's just a nice, beautiful wrap-up. You'll like it. I think you'll like it. So I'm going to say this film is an 8 out of 10. Closer to a 9 than it is a 7. 8 out of 10. And I actually do mean that. It's a very high-regarded film, and I think it deserves some kind of prize, at least for cinematography and directing. All right, so now this review is out of the way. Got some other reviews I have to do for Anthonix Maximus Matinee and Anthonix Maximus Reviews. So I hope you keep watching. If you're an Anthonix Maxiteer, thank you for watching, and thank you for being subscribed. If you're not, what's wrong with you? You should have subscribed by now. And all my talking, you should have hit the subscribe button. What's going on? What's taking so long? And go see Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.